Welcome to all participants of this important conference by REHVA, the associations for, let's say, everything that's got to do with building energy. And apologies, I cannot be here in person today because, like it is, conflicting appointments coming all of a sudden. So my apologies for that, but of course I wish you a very fruitful conference. Why is this so important? In the EU, 40% of all energy consumptions happens in buildings. 85% of our buildings were built before the millennia, before 2000. And 75% of them have, let's say, not the best energy performance. So in order to strengthen our energy independence, in order to strengthen also our decarbonization agenda, we have to focus on buildings. But there is an additional point, which is air quality. You all know we have an air quality directive in the EU, but still 240,000 people die each year prematurely due to air pollution. And the air quality directive only looks at the outdoor air quality, not at the indoor air quality. And of course, how we heat our buildings does have a correlation to both of these issues. So therefore, it's so important to look at how do we serve our buildings with energy in a way that is sustainable, affordable, and reliable. Right now, the European Commission has set their eyes on simplification. We have to make sure that simplification does not mean deregulation. Because our flagship legislative, the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive, must not be simplified by deregulating it, because that will come at the health of our citizens and also at their energy bills. We have to make sure that this legislation stays as it is. Of course, this doesn't mean that we cannot simplify things. We can streamline the provisions of the EPBD, of the Energy Efficiency Directive, and also when it comes to indoor environmental quality. And of course, we will all want to reduce administrative burdens. We all want a holistic approach to our buildings, to the quality of our buildings, and to the energy consumption of our buildings. And let's not forget, there is an economic angle to that. An energy efficient building uses less energy. I mean, that is why we are all doing this. And what does that mean? The energy bills of the tenants or of the businesses that have their quarters in that building go down. And of course, we cease feeding Putin's war chest more. We have to reduce the gas consumption in our buildings, but this must not come at the expense of air quality. Therefore, the most efficient way to heat a building, usually, is using a heat pump, because you can use the ambient temperature to actually push up the temperature in your building, and each kilowatt hour of electricity is transformed to 4 or even up to 6 kilowatt hours of heat or cold. Why not do it? And also, we shouldn't forget there is a social angle to that. Today, the people living in the least efficient buildings are mostly those that cannot afford moving elsewhere. And they are also those that suffer the most from poor air quality, which impacts their health. Therefore, I expect from the European Commission to set up a dedicated fund for the renovation of the least efficient buildings, taking into account the social angle, especially also when it comes to homeowners who cannot afford this transition by themselves. A lot of them are elderly people where each bank will say, well, why should I give a loan to a 60 or 65-year-old person? This is where the EU has to come in and has to help. The EPBD aims for the full decarbonization of the building sector, addressing both energy efficiency and also the well-being of the occupants. And it introduces for the very first time a definition of indoor environmental quality, which means the conditions inside a building that influence health and well-being on the occupants based on parameters, temperature, humidity, ventilation rate, and also presence of contaminants. So now for the very first time we have the address of the indoor air quality, where most of the people spend most of the time actually, because this is also so important for health. And we must make sure that this doesn't get thrown under another omnibus, which the Commission right now likes to roll out everywhere. Fortunately, the implementation package for the EPBD is a step in the right direction. It comprises a delegated regulation which revises the methodological framework for calculating the cost optimal levels, and also an implementing regulation for common templates for the transfer of information from national databases to the EU Building Stock Observatory, as well as a comprehensive set of guidance documents. And I would like to focus a bit on the guidance document for technical building systems, indoor environmental quality and inspections. This is important. It primarily describes how the EPBD defines, assesses and ensures indoor environmental quality. But it also provides practical information, guidance, clarification. You have examples of optimal IEQ limits. You have monitoring approaches, you have reference standards, you have frameworks. So hopefully this can clear some of the questions which have been addressed to the Commission by the Member States, which have to, of course, implement the EPBD. So as I said, the EPBD implementation package is a good signal of continuous efforts by the European Commission. As I said, the EPBD is the most important tool to address energy efficiency in the building sector. And so far it seems that EPBD will not be opened, but you never can be sure. So it's important to maintain also other regulations. We have heard worrying things about opening the European Efficiency Directive, Energy Efficiency Directive, or the Eco-Design Directive, because this will probably be on the table in the second quarter of the next year. And there, of course, we have, for example, stoves. We have biomass and coal, which is burned for heating buildings, obviously still, unfortunately, and this can be, let's say, pushed in the right direction by the Eco-Design Directive. Today, in many cities throughout the European Union, the main reason why particulate matter limits are surpassed is no longer transport, but heating of buildings. And this is a serious health issue which we have to address, and it will not be possible to address it through Air Quality Directive only, because obviously cities don't have an influence on how their tenants heat their buildings. So we have to make sure that if people would like to use biomass or even coal stoves to heat their buildings, they have to be not only energy efficient, but also we have to push pollution down as far as possible. So we need this holistic approach, looking at energy efficiency, energy independence, health, and also our climate targets. We have to make sure that this is done in a socially just way, addressing the needs of the most vulnerable people in our European Union. And my call to all of you, if the Commission opens up a public consultation, whether they should maybe water down the Energy Efficiency Directive or not address some products in the Eco-Design Directive, I expect you to become vocal, to raise your voice, to make the relevant input to the Commission's call, to make sure that our citizens get the best from European regulation. I wish you all a very fruitful conference, good debates, and keep on fighting for a climate-neutral, energy-efficient, health-relevant European building sector.